Hello, welcome to CLC News. Today is the 23rd of January 2021, and this is the second video that we've actually put out today. The reason we've put out this as second video is it's a completely different subject, and obviously we're tackling different issues. We also wanted to clarify the position of the Common Law Court and what's currently going on in the future and what has happened over the last 3.5 years we've existed. Now, for those of you that had some leisure time over the Christmas and New Year period, if that had been the case, you may have obviously sat down and discussed what was happening with COVID and the lockdown and various things, and obviously been discussing with various friends and family members if you weren't obviously confined or obviously kept apart. Now, I had been discussing with quite a few people involved with the Common Law Court various issues, and we have looked at the situation regarding the governments, the courts, the justice system, not only here but internationally. Now, there was an issue that came up as part of the conversation. We discussed an individual, I believe his name was Clarence Darrow, who was a famous solicitor in the States at the turn of the century. Basically, he had practiced and was involved in various cases which were groundbreaking. Now, as we were discussing this individual, it was noted that although he'd worked within the system, that would be the statutory system for a number of years, the thing he couldn't actually get to grips with when he was asked at the end of his career was that he couldn't get over the fact that man has the ability to treat one another inhumanely, and he couldn't get over that. Now, that in itself got us thinking about various things about the Common Law Court and what's been going on. Now, while we've been fighting here as living men and women, there has been many people obviously trying to deal with issues and highlight what's been going on worldwide. Now, unfortunately, we don't have quite a lot of prominent people working with the Common Law Court, and they may or may not know about it. However, we'd like to also recognise some of the people who are putting their neck out and obviously taking on the establishment. Now, it was discovered not so long ago that both Van Morrison and Chris Rea had obviously taken out some new singles music. I think Van Morrison had actually put out an album with a number of songs on it, which was dedicated to the lockdown and the corruption and what's currently going on. And one of the songs he actually wrote, he gave to Chris Rea, who also decided to release this as a single as well. So these were actually released. Now again, it's great because of the lyrics. It's great because it's highlighting what's going on. It's just unfortunate that there's not many people within the industry that will stand up and be counted. But I'd like to thank them for putting this out on behalf of the people with the Common Law Co-op, and I'd like them obviously to continue doing so. If at all possible, it'd also be nice if they were willing to do some music for the Common Law Co-op to assist with what we're doing. But on that issue and what we're doing just now, it's also been noted, personally, this is I'd highlight an individual that stood up, stuck his neck up above the parapet and basically taken on the government. Now, this individual is Marcus Rashford. I'd followed him for quite a while. Obviously, I enjoy watching football. He is a young football player, for those of you who do not know, but he had a difficult upbringing. Now, although he's obviously signed up to a major club, it was Manchester United, he'd obviously had a difficult upbringing. And again, there was many times as a child that he actually struggled to eat, meaning that obviously his mother, who was on her own, found it difficult to provide food for her family. Now, this being the case, it's something that was close to his heart, and then he highlighted the current plight of the people in this country. Now, I think it's disgusting personally that we have a country just now, and we're supposed to be one of the most forward-thinking countries in the world. We also have supposedly one of the best economies in the world, and we have an established government, traditions, everything in place, but we still have people, or more importantly, children, going without food. Not only that, but the amount of parents and mothers going without food to feed their children is disgusting. Now, I had actually spoken to some friends because I don't tend to watch a lot of television, certainly not the normal television. I don't mind watching films, but the television happened to be on over the festive period, and I just want to highlight an advert that I saw. Now, normally, year to year, at this time of year, especially Christmas, there's adverts up from various people appealing for money to help various people, normally in third world countries. There may be famines, there may be various diseases, there may be shortages of water, which is all understandable, and it happens, and again, it is disgusting. But they put out an appeal at the end of the year, which is quite good. Now, this year it caught my eye because as I was walking through a room, I actually caught my eye when I saw the television. There was a gentleman, a male, possibly sort of 40 maybe. He happened to be standing in what I presumed was some sort of small kitchenette, maybe in a bedsit type thing. He was actually reaching in a cupboard, and again, I'm not sure what he was actually doing, but he pulled out a tin from the cupboard. I think it was maybe soup or something, but he was actually trying to prepare a meal for himself. Now, according to the advert, he was actually on his own. He struggled. He lived in this sort of bedsit, and he was finding it difficult to feed himself. So they were actually putting out an appeal to assist with feeding men, women, people, families in the UK. This advert was put out by the Red Cross, and they were actually saying that they were looking for help to feed the people and the vulnerable or those who can't cope in the UK. Now, I stopped for a minute and just looked at that. We're at this situation just now, regardless of which position you're in the UK, but again, even abroad, if you look at that and you look at the impact in your own countries, we're at the position here just now whereby we cannot feed our own people. Nobody should do without food. Nobody should be left to live like that. And it's disgusting. Regardless of the country you're in, the people have a system that they've set up to put politicians into place to act for the people. The politicians are not fit for purpose. They are there to represent the people. They are there to obviously follow the orders from the people. These politicians are doing everything they can to take control, and they're not following the people. And when it gets to the stage that people can't even feed themselves or look after their families, it's disgusting. How many, as politicians, have had to go into furlough during this COVID situation? The politicians remain in place. The workers that they choose remain in place, and they obviously get their salaries. Yet everyone else is forced to stay at home, locked up in their houses, told what they can do and what they can't do. They struggle for money. The economy is going down, and these politicians do whatever they want. Well, I'm sorry, but if that's the politicians you have, and you want them in place, best of luck to you. I haven't voted. I don't vote, obviously, because my beliefs and because it's corrupt. And I don't vote as there's no point because Parliament is a corporation. The politicians are not there to work for the people. They're certainly proving that point. They're not looking after the people, and yet they're looking after themselves. Now, we get various quotes which amuse me occasionally from various people. The one that stuck, I remember, I think it was attributed to Mark Twain. It was one that says, now, if voting meant anything, they wouldn't allow you to do so, which was great, which just shows you how stupid it is. He says they believe that they can actually cover the wool over your eyes. Turn around and tell you that they're working for the people, that they are there to look after the people, they will run it in the country in your interests anywhere in the world, and that to do so, you have to vote for politicians. Now, if that was the case and it worked that way, and you actually had control, the government would never allow it. They don't want you having control. They're there because the system's in place to allow them to take control and run the system to meet their ends. This is which we've just found with COVID. Now, if this is a way you wish to go, fine. But for those of you who obviously wish to stand up, this is Van Morrison, Chris Rea, Marcus Rashford, and there will be many more. It's just unfortunately we don't get the information out and it's not highlighted. It would be nice if a few more people stood up to do this, but exposing the system and what's really happening just now is what needs to happen. And it's only when you do so, it's going to then make change. Now, I pointed out before, this is given the discussions we have, for those of you who are tuning in maybe for the first time, when we look at what's happening within their existing system, it's all based on corporations and contract law. The governments are registered companies, Parliament's registered companies, the police are registered companies, the health service is a registered companies, the authorities, local authorities, this is everywhere, councils, they are all registered companies. Now, when you deal with these people, you deal with them on a contractual basis and you deal with them through the legal fiction, which obviously is not the living man or the living woman. Now, we've discussed this before, I've mentioned it, but I would say again, the easiest way to rectify the problems we have and to sort everything out is to ensure that if the people wish to hold elections to have Parliament or people represent them and to run the country, this would resolve everything if we'd done one thing. If the people stood up and said, we will have politicians, but anyone that stands for Parliament and a position as a member of Parliament, they may only do so if they confirm that they are a living man or a living woman. Because if they don't, and they stand for Parliament just now, when they take up that position, they are working as a corporation and they're working against the people. If they work as a living man or a living woman, they are then held accountable to the people and they can be prosecuted. As a fiction, statutory rules apply, contract rules apply, and it's got nothing to do with the people in common law. But as I said, that's an easy way to resolve it. But on a lighter note, what we'd like to do just now is we'd like to highlight what's been happening over the last 3.5 years with the common law court. We discussed obviously man's inhumanity to man just now, which obviously Clarence Darrow spoke about. But if we look at that just now, we'll just look at one or two of the aspects, bearing in mind, we just pointed out that these courts that they have and the justice system they have, courts are saying police is a business, they are actually registered corporations. Now, if you believed that you were having justice in these places, no, that's not the case. It's ludicrous, but even under this and the rules that they use just now, they tell you that everyone is equal under the law. Well, first of all, it's not law because it's rules and regulations. And secondly, they said everyone's equal under the law, which is not true. Well, be nice. It's not true. It's a blatant lie because basically there's no way that you can ever go into court as a living man, standing there and obtain justice. He said because it's stacked against you. Now, there are separate times when people go in and they may actually be able to get some sort of result, a small result within the system. If that's the case, they quickly change their own rules, regulations, or laws as they name them, some of them, so that people cannot continue achieving results. If you go in, it says, and you achieve the result, it says you may still not may get the decision you want because the judges, although you have got the better of them, the judges have the ability to turn around and just rule against you, which they do in many occasions. The unfortunate thing about this is when that happens, these judges are not held accountable for committing crimes against the people, which is the problem we have again. So the common law court system, judicial system was set up about 3.5 years ago. The first court was convened on the 11th of June 2017, and with that we've established a separate judicial system. This one has nothing to do with the state. It's nothing to do with the crown, the monarchy. And again, it's only run by living men and living women. Now, unlike various other systems, which obviously deal with race, religion, colour, creed, things like that, for example, Maoris, Aborigines, American Indians, things like this, or obviously religious ones, you have Muslims, Sharia courts, things like this. All these courts are applicable for small communities. In relation to the common law court, it's applicable to all, which is a difference. So what we have is we've set up a separate system in this country, and not only here but worldwide. And we'd like to confirm that we have people registered on the site from 141 countries just now. Now, this is basically a declaration from these individuals for their birth, which confirms that they stand together with us, which is a problem we come back to. There's too many groups working, trying to do different things, whereby you have an established system here that if everyone stands together, it gives you more authority when the people stand together, and it's easier to deal with issues and protect the people. So there's no reason for multiple organisations to do various things. This is, you have a system here and it's easy if the people just stand together. This has been set up and it's also been acknowledged through the existing state system, because we have written verdicts from the courts confirming, or their place of business, confirming that the common law court does exist. It confirms that we convene our own courts, we issue our own summonses, we also issue our own paperwork by way of birth certificates and so on. Now, these are all accepted by the state, but the state, despite accepting them, have says that they do not deal with them simply because they have a separate system, as in contract law and a statutory system. They cannot deal with the common law court because we only deal with living men and living women, which they are not, which is why they cannot deal with it, but they have conceded that we do exist. Now, this is the first time that this has ever happened before. If you go back 1,000 years, now it's applicable throughout the world as well. But if we look at the UK and go back 1,000 years, we have never had a justice system that has been run by the people. We have always had a system that's run by the state, controlled by the state, whether it be parliament, government, or whether it's a monarchy. Now, for the first time ever, we have a second system available, which they've accepted and acknowledged. They don't like it, but they have acknowledged we exist. Now, this has been set up, and which we said earlier on, it's been set up and it's run by the people, for the people, with no state involvement, which is obviously the way it should be. Now, in relation to the paperwork that we have just now, we have actually taken this paperwork and used it in various courts throughout the UK. We've actually been to every level of court. This is from the smallest courts, magistrates, and the Sheriff Court in Scotland, right up to including the Supreme Court and the Court of Session in Scotland. We've put in the paperwork to each one of these courts, and the paperwork has been accepted as lawful. They cannot challenge it, they cannot deal with this. Now, we have had various barristers been served with the paperwork, solicitors, judges. They've all accepted this paperwork and it's never ever been disputed. Now, this has also happened to both, the Scottish and the UK, and also international governments worldwide. We've actually served papers on the governments worldwide, and nobody's challenged the documents, as they can't, because they cover, they carry with it the authority of the people. Now, within the UK, just now, we have 5 separate police forces have also accepted the Common Law Court documents, and also the Common Law Court cards as proof of ID. We have dealt with a few cases in relation to police, and the individuals concerned had wanted to raise charges against the police, so we tried to submit a criminal report. Now, to do so, the police had tried to change it to a criminal complaint, which goes nowhere, but we've insisted it's a criminal report. Now, they had said they weren't happy about doing it, but on the condition that proof of ID was provided, they would actually then deal with it. Now, for proof of ID, on the various occasions that we've used it, we have submitted a common law birth certificate. We submitted a common law certificate, which is ownership certificate for the fictitious name, meaning the legal fiction. and we also produced photographic ID by way of a common law court card. Now, having submitted that to these 5 police forces, each one of them had came back normally within a week. They've came back and confirmed that the ID was acceptable, confirming it was also lawful, and they then started an investigation, the criminal complaint against their own police. So again, confirming yet again that these documents are lawful. Now, we've also issued them to various other institutions. I'll run through a few just now, but the same can be used worldwide. We've issued them to banks, mortgage companies, bailiffs, councils, local authorities, social services and child services, bankruptcy trustees, the DVLA, which is obviously the vehicle one in the UK, the land registry, the NHS Trust, which is hospitals, our existing MPs, the Lords, the First Ministers and Prime Ministers, and each document within has never been challenged. We've also dealt with a case, I think it was a couple of years ago, or a year and a half, 2 years ago, whereby we had a mother who's from Northern Ireland, who had a new partner who was Australian, and they had a couple of children. They decided to go back to live in Australia, and they moved over. Now, the 2 children, first of all, didn't have birth certificates. They were young, and also the mother was getting sick because they wanted to vaccinate the children. So there was a bit of discussion and dispute regarding vaccinations, and it was decided that they wouldn't pursue this, so the children didn't have to be vaccinated. Unfortunately, shortly after, they were on a temporary visa of residency. They had to apply for a permanent residency order. Now, when she went to the authorities, she was informed that under no circumstances would the children be given a residency order to stay because they had no birth certificate. They was given the choice to register the children on their birth certificate, but she didn't wish to do so under the statutory system. So through her father, who was in Northern Ireland, they've actually contacted the Common Law Court and were given 2 certificates for the children. Now, having taken these certificates from the Common Law Court, they then submitted that to the relevant authorities in Australia, and I think very shortly, within about 2 weeks, the mother received email confirmation that the documents were acceptable. They thanked them for producing them, and they were happy to announce via email that the mother and her 2 children were granted permanent residency orders to stay there. So again, confirming that the documentation is lawful and can be used. Now, in a recent issue, this time we'll highlight Croatia. There was an individual who was from the UK, had went over to Croatia to see family members and friends, and they also wanted to set up a business there. I think they have businesses elsewhere, but wanted to open up a branch in Croatia. So they went to a bank to set up an account for this new company, and the bank manager then asked for a passport for ID purposes. The individual concerned had left the passport at home, had forgot to take it in, but had with him a common law court card. So he took out the common law court card and presented it to the bank manager. The bank manager thanked him for it, went away, took a photocopy of it, handed it back, accepted the common law court card, and that day there and then created and opened a bank account for the new company. So again, confirming the card that is lawful, it's been issued and carries with it the weight of authority of the people, but again, it's been used by the banks to open accounts. Now, moving on, we've also had a case recently, probably about 5-6 months ago. We had round about the Stoke-on-Trent area in England, UK. We had an individual who had been unlawfully picked up by the police. He was driving at the time a car, but obviously there's a dispute, but there was nothing wrong with what had happened. But the police had obviously arrested him, asked him to give his name, and he refused to do so. He confirmed that he stood under common law. Now, they took him into the police station, they then put him in the cell overnight, and refused to speak, and they took him to the magistrate the next day. Now, having taken him to the magistrate, this individual refused to give his name to the magistrate. So again, the magistrate, not being happy, sent him back to the police station where he spent another couple of days. Now, he reached the 72 hours, which I believe is only a length of time they can detain him for, without obtaining another order. But because he'd been in 72 hours, they then went back to the magistrate's court, which I believe was on a Friday, and they asked for an extension. So the magistrate granted an extension, which means that he could be detained for longer. Now, we have constables, a few constables for the Common Law Court just now, but coincidentally, one of the constables had found out with this. So there was a discussion with myself and a couple of others in relation to this issue, and it was decided that the constable would go to get him out. So we actually prepared and got copies of the birth certificate for the individual under common law, the ownership of the fictitious name for this individual, and also a copy of the Common Law Court declaration. So a constable in uniform and with a Common Law Court constable card had went to the police station. So I rung the bell to get someone out, and one of the officers had came out to speak to them. So the ID was kind of shown, confirming the position for the constable under common law, and the police officer had said he never heard about that before. So it didn't matter. Obviously, we then asked for the officer's name. He wouldn't give his name, but he gave his badge number. So we left it at that, and then presented him with the paperwork from the common law court, i.e. the certificates. Now, having done that, this officer was informed that there was an individual being unlawfully detained. It was unacceptable, and that officer we're speaking to would be held personally accountable and liable in his private capacity. We also informed them that the same would be applicable to the chief constable unless the individual was released within 1 hour. So we pointed that out, and the constable, after leaving the documentation with him, then went home. It took about 30 minutes to get home, but about 10 minutes after getting into the house, he received a phone call from the individual who's in the police station. Now, the individual phoned up and literally says, "What the hell have you just done?" Thinking there was a problem, they said, "What do you mean?" He says, "I've just been taken out from my cell. They have thrown me out of the police station and they've dropped all charges." Now, the reason they done that is because they were presented with the common law court documents. They were told that the individual officer and the chief constable would be held accountable because it was unlawful, and we confirmed that it was also an unlawful detention, which it was. But having done that, and obviously went to them to confirm their position, he was released in 40 minutes. And again, there was no charges. They were all dropped. So again, it is working. Now, on another subject, this is myself and two other constables had went to, I believe it was Exeter prison, I may be wrong. There was an individual being unlawfully detained then, and they were trying to extradite him to France. The individual concerned you may know of was David Noakes. Now, David Noakes, they've been trying to get him over to France for a couple of years, for years, but it says he's had to deal with the courts in this country first. Now, myself and a couple of colleagues went down to the prison. The governor for the prison came out, surrounded by about 20 of these prison officers. We then tried to give him the paperwork, a common law court order confirming that he had to release David Noakes into our custody. And as soon as we mentioned that we had an order, this individual turned around stated that he would not release anyone unless his superiors told him. He turned around quickly and run back into the prison. He was quickly followed by all the officers as well, prison officers. Now, while we were left standing, we needed assistance. We also called for the police to back us up. Unfortunately, despite speaking to 3 different individuals, and the last one was a police inspector, they refused to come and assist with a lawful order, confirming that they were part of the problem and they were committing crimes against the people. Now, unfortunately, we couldn't actually do anything that day, and the following day they did take David away to France, where he's currently in prison, but we are working on that, and the paperwork regarding this is currently sitting with the senior courts in London, so there may be a follow-up in the near future. In relation to other aspects, we've looked at what we will do is say that we've had or assisted in various So we'll just get this. We have assisted in various other issues. For example, we have assisted and we've actually halted various repossessions, which we've done successfully. Although we've done that successfully, this is what they tend to do, the bailiffs, is come back later on when we don't know about it, and they're actually forcing their way in and they will try to evict people. Now, on the occasions they have, many times we take back the house, and quite a few occasions we still have the houses, in fact individuals running. However, we have lost some. No, I'm saying we've lost probably 6 or 7 houses, properties. However, all these issues are still being discussed and debated in the courts, and we're still fighting for them, and we're reasonably confident we'll come out with the properties and damages. However, we have halted these and we are having success now. I think given the numbers we're dealing with and the properties that's been taken back, for all the properties it's registered with the Common Law Court, I think there's only a couple of percent, maybe 2% of the properties we've lost. Everything else is left and they are registered under common law, and the statutory authorities can't do anything about this. Now, we've also had, in additional to criminal charges, we've had criminal charges issued against people, and there's been various cases in courts in both England and Scotland. And when we have presented the Common Law Court paperwork, the cases have been very quickly dropped. Not only dropped, but they dropped the charges. We have also, in one of these courts, confirmed the established position of a living man. Now, that's been done and accepted. It's been referred to in court. This is based on the common law birth certificate. Now, bearing in mind we can't deal with living men, and also the ownership of the legal title and fictitious name. Now, bearing in mind, it says this was created fraudulently. It says the state have no control, and the birth certificate they have is fraudulent. It's void. It says because they did not disclose what they were doing at the time. It was a valid contract because it involved more than one party. It involved the child, the parents, and the state, which makes a contractual agreement. There was no full disclosure, so therefore the contract was void, which means that the fictitious name, the legal name, entity exists. It says, so to protect yourself and individuals, it says the rightful owner should be the individual who is given the birth name. So you are allowed to claim ownership of that and obtain ownership paper, which we've done, myself included. Now, when we went to court, we've confirmed this in a court. We've presented the paperwork. We've given them the opportunity to challenge us, not only the court, but the prosecutor. They failed to do so, and we've confirmed in court that we legally owned, as within their system and lawfully owned, the fictitious name, and it cannot challenge that. So we've actually established that here. Now, moving on, we've also, in their courts, myself included, dealt with a judge which we've confirmed was a convicted criminal. We've provided paperwork from the Common Law Court to confirm that. They couldn't do anything about it. In the court hearing in question, the one I'm referring to, which I attended, we tried to arrest the judge in question. It was in Scotland, it was a sheriff, and obviously the police were asked to arrest him. We didn't push it because we knew they wouldn't. However, we highlighted that he was a convicted criminal, and we highlighted this to have it on record, which it was. And again, various hearings we've done and we've been involved with throughout the UK. It says on the production of the CLC paperwork, we are finding that the cases are being adjourned for months on end because they cannot deal with it. In fact, I'm dealing with a case recently. It says, oh, very soon I'm helping someone in London. We're appearing at Westminster Magistrates Court on the 8th of February, which I believe is a couple of weeks' time. It's on a Monday, 2 weeks of Monday. So we'll be down there just now with an unusual argument with the Common Law Court paperwork we've presented. So it's interesting, and there has been quite a few people turning up to the cases. So it's nice to have a chat, but I think they'll be very surprised with what we're going to do this time. But as I said, we're at the Westminster Magistrates Court on the 8th of February. So we'll give you a further update in relation to that. Now, on a couple of other points, we have actually achieved various things. Just to outline, we've dealt with over a couple hundred people. We've dealt with numerous cases, and we've prosecuted various people. Amongst the people we prosecuted 7 judges, 4 from Scotland, I think it's 2 from England and 1 from France. They were all found guilty. We've prosecuted an ex-Prime Minister, which was Theresa May. We've prosecuted cabinet ministers just now. In fact, one of them we prosecuted and found guilty actually resigned from opposition shortly afterwards, which was Nicky Morgan. One of the judges we prosecuted in England, we'd obviously been involved in a case, and for a number of months we confirmed that he was guilty. He was a criminal, and we had the paperwork, and after about 5 or 6 months, he decided he wouldn't put up with it any longer, so he actually retired 8 years early. So obviously that's been done as well, and again, Nicky Morgan resigned from the cabinet. So these things are working, and they can't do anything about them, and it shows you the power that this paperwork and the authority the people have. Now, we've also annulled 2 acts of parliament. One was the Cancer Act 1939. This is given obviously the behaviour of the state in the pharmaceutical companies, and we also cancelled or annulled the council tax, which is administration enforcement regulations. So that was annulled as well. Obviously the state were informed about this, they're not happy about it, they don't like it, and they're still trying to use these acts. But because it's been annulled by the people, it is unlawful and they can be prosecuted for that, which we point out they don't like. But bearing in mind that the people in this country have the authority. Now, what I'm going to do is highlight one final story just now. I'm going to touch on it briefly just to tell you what the outcome is, and I'm going to do a video tomorrow to highlight the story in detail. But we can confirm that just over a week ago, it was about 8 days ago, we received information that children, there's 5 siblings between, I think it's 5 and 15, they had been removed from their parents unlawfully 7 months ago, and they have all been split up, put out to different families, and obviously it's been a long, complicated issue, but they removed all the children. Now, after fighting for about 7 months and taking a case against them, we can confirm that as from 8 days ago, all the children have now been returned, and they're now home with the mother. So obviously the mother has children, we've got them all back, and again, that's a huge result for the Common Law Court. But if you tune in tomorrow, the next video we're putting up, we'll give you the full story in relation to this to explain how it happened. So I think pretty much that is the history of the Common Law Court. We've had about 3.5 years, just over. We're doing quite well, and there's quite a lot of issues going on. As I said just now, people are using this, the Common Law Court. We have obviously a new monetary system that is being put in place just now through this new accounts and through the BEEP system. The currency is obviously called CLC currency, but just now we are in the position whereby you can open up your own accounts just now. Now, we're also looking at obviously the healthcare aspects, we're looking at enforcement, we're also looking at education facilities as well. So these things will be happening, and there will be videos up in the coming days to explain the stage we're at, and obviously what's going to be happening. But we're literally within a couple of months of doing this. So the information is important. And as I said just now, we've just started off the year with a huge result on the return of these 5 children. So for those who doubt what's going on and doubt the authority we have, and obviously the weight we have and the clout we have, it does work. But on a final point, what we'd like to do, what we'd like to do is just to confirm just now that there are quite a few people, obviously this is dealing with things. Now, we have many groups. This is trying to deal with problems. This is some successfully, some unsuccessfully. The difficulty is we need to get people to stand together. Now, through the Common Law Court, we actually have people from 141 countries. So that's actually quite good. Now, we actually work away, but we find out every so often there are people that try to have a pop at what we do, and obviously they're just trying to cause problems and continue down that route. What I'd like to do is I'd like to point out a few things. If this system is to be used correctly, and it does work correctly, if this system did not work, it would be shut down, it would be closed. The state would actually do so by confirming what we're doing incorrectly. But because this is run lawfully, because it's run by the people and it's for the people, the state cannot prevent this from running. So therefore, we've achieved that and it will not be closed. So we need to protect this. Now, in relation to protecting this, we obviously have had people who have actually tried to use the process. Unfortunately, there's quite a bit to it to convene co-ops, and they've been given instruction to a degree, but these individuals had decided to obviously pursue this themselves. Now, anyone throughout the world can convene a common law co-op. It is providing basic rules and principles are applied. You have everything in place through the common law co-op to run it. It costs nothing. You will be given help and assistance. However, it says if it's not done correctly, it says what you've done is you've had a hearing for something and it's a complete waste of time. Any order that you believe that you'll obtain is not lawful and will never be recognised by the people because you haven't followed the procedure. For example, this is, would you convene a common law co-op and have a jury of 2 members and the 2 members are your relations? Well, no, you can't do that. Common sense, it's not lawful. The people will not accept that. So therefore, if you do not comply with basic principles, any decision reached will not be lawful. There is a certain procedure and we have to ensure that the courts we operate are lawful and they are actually superior to the existing co-ops, places of business that the statutory system used. Now, we can do that, but what we'd like to say is there's been common law co-ops, I think it was six common law co-ops tried to be convened over the last 5 or 6 months. There was one in Estonia, one in the Republic of Ireland, and 4 in Australia. And unfortunately, although we've actually been speaking to these people, they were obviously had limited information. They weren't ready to proceed with them. In fact, in a couple of cases, they were actually told specifically what not to do. This information was ignored and they ended up making a mess of the whole procedure. Now, it also means that each one of the decisions from these hearings are not not valid. They are void. They cannot stand. They're not lawful. Now, there's no point in convening co-ops if it's not done correctly. So therefore, it's the facilities exist here. If we work together, stand together, we can continue with these cases and we will be doing so in the future. There are people from additional countries that we are speaking to just now and working with, and we will continue to obviously run these cases throughout the world. Now, in relation to people trying to bring down the common law court, what I would say is that we've had a couple of issues in some countries. One in particular was Australia. Now, there's quite a large response of people from Australia, which I think is excellent. They all are keen on the common law and they all use this and want to do so. The numbers are swelling and they're learning more and more, which is great. I believe in the coming weeks, the next 3 or 4 weeks, there'll be a couple of cases which we're trying to assist in as well, so that will be good. However, when they initially tried to set up, we had a split. There seemed to be 2 fractions or 2 groups. I think they've split again, but what became apparent was that within the groups just now, when people that were wanting to do this were wanting to use the common law co-op for financial benefits and financial purposes. It's something we would never do and we would never have any part of. And we've said, no, we're not using this. They were thinking about using it for monetary gain and we were dead against what they're doing. We said no. So we've had individuals obviously trying to set this up themselves and do something, but they're making a mess of it. Now, one in particular I would like to highlight just now, because I think it's had a pop occasionally, is someone he refers to himself as the Bloody Aussie Battler. He has podcasts, but I believe his name is Mike Holt. Now, what he's actually done is, while the information he has, a lot of it is relevant and it's quite good, we have had difficulty with him because he has actually taken the logo for the common law court and used it himself. Now, this is actually copyrighted. It's not his. It's to be used for the common law court. He has no permission. And the fact he's taken that just now and he's using it, he's committing crimes against the people. Now, while he's committing crimes against the people, he's trying to obtain money, obviously, and use this for monetary gain. And also, despite contacting the term to remove the logo, he's refusing to do so. He stated that obviously he's entitled to use it, so he'll continue to do so. Well, he's not entitled to do it. There's no point in obviously arguing at this moment in time. We may do in the future to sort it out. But the point is, if someone wishes to convene a common law court and it's lawful, they do so themselves. Why would they have to use the common law court that we're using for the position that we've set up, the site we've set up? They're using the common law court logo because we are running this lawfully. We have people and followers from 141 countries, and he wishes to tag on to that to obtain money. Now, he's using that unlawfully. It is a crime against the people because the common law court logo is for the people. He's not obtained permission to use it, and he's putting this on his podcast, despite the fact he's been totally new that he refuses to do so. Now, for all those people and the people who listen to what he's saying and follow him, I would tell you just now to think carefully about what he's doing. If you have someone who purports to assist people, to help them lawfully, and to stand against the state, but this individual himself is guilty of committing crimes against the people by using something which is not his, it's theft, and by refusing to obviously says let it go, he's using that because he knows the position of the common law court will give him credibility, but it doesn't. Now, what we'd like to point out is that if obviously it's not on the common law court website, it is in the UK, this is not valid, it's not lawful. Now, obviously, we do speak to various people, and there's no objection to using anything on the site. The paperwork, everything's passed out to the public, and it's used and it's free of charge. It's to protect the public. If anyone is abusing their position to try and extort money or obtain money or use this for financial reasons, and they're using it unlawfully, we will never ever condone this is what these people are doing, and we will never stand by and assist with these people or obviously confirm that what they're doing is lawful. It's not. It is a crime against the people. And the longer that they continue to use the logo, it confirms more and more the crimes that they're committing against the people. So I would suggest that anyone looking at this individual would not listen to him, would not take any advice, because he is a criminal. And again, this happens to one or two other individuals that try to knock what we're doing. The system exists, anyone can use it, but the fact he doesn't want to use it lawfully, and it's free of charge, he's using it for ulterior motives, which we believe we know what it is, but the fact he's also using our logo, be very careful about this, and it is a crime against the people. And as I said, the longer it continues, the more crimes he's committing. So bear that in mind for the future. And as I said just now, if people wish to obviously help with this system, they join in, they can help out whichever country you're in. It's applicable to all. And while we are increasing just now and getting more and more people to help, we are trying to put a lot of things up onto the site just now to help with education, tutorials, and further information. But if you keep an eye on the website, obviously we will get this up and we'll work with the people. So it's been a long one, but goodbye for now, and hopefully you'll join us again. The next video, as I said, will go up tomorrow. Now, when it goes up, it will be about the 5 children that we managed to get back who are now returned and living with their mother. So we'll cover that tomorrow, and then in the coming days, we have quite a few other things to go on with. So thank you for joining just now. Please share this information, and again, help out with what we're doing just now by joining up on the site, and obviously this is spreading the word. Okay, goodbye, and we'll speak to you later.